Where are Jordan Love and Justin Fields in their development? And where do they still have to get better? Former NFL quarterback JT O'Sullivan, the man behind QB School, is on the show today to talk all things quarterback in a matchup that is all about these two quarterbacks. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You were Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. JT O'Sullivan on the show today talking Jordan Love, Justin Fields, quarterback evaluation, quarterback development, Matt LaFleur, Luke Getsy a little bit, all of the things that go into quarterback play and quarterback evaluation, because this week, this game is so much about the QB play. I'd be remiss if we didn't bring up, though, the supporting cast. This has been a big thing that has been discussed around Justin Fields and his supporting cast. Christian Watson did not practice the last 2 days for the Green Bay Packers. Does not seem to be trending in the right direction. Romeo Doubs did return to practice yesterday. Seemed to look good. So the assumption that we're working on now is if Romeo Doubs can practice tomorrow, you'd think based on history, he'd be good to go. And if Christian Watson can't, he can't. Matt LaFleur said he'd give them the week to get ready. He said the same thing about David Bakhtiari earlier in the week, but turns out that was mostly just veteran rest. Bakhtiari is expected to play in this one, and the team otherwise healthy. Rashawn Gary back. He's expected to play week 1. Devondre Campbell back. He's expected to play week 1. So you're going to have your starting offensive line. You're going to have your preferred starters on defense, because I think Eric Stokes right now, not a preferred starter at that boundary corner. We'll see exactly what they're going to put together there. So Christian Watson would be a big deal. But we saw it last night. Neither the Chiefs nor the Lions, especially without Travis Kelce for the Chiefs and without Jamison Williams for the Lions, have great skill talent. And without Travis Kelce, the Chiefs have like no skill talent. Certainly in terms of proven players. And both teams are just like, we'll figure it out. We'll do what we can. Maybe don't throw screens on 3rd and long to Marvin Jones. That seems like a good idea, but so much of what they're able to do, those two teams, and it's why it's a great template for us as we head push toward this game, is so much work can be done by the scheme. And I think that's where the Packers are going to find themselves early in the season. If they don't have some of their key guys, I think they can do it. I wrote about it for The Leap yesterday, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, about how Aaron Jones can be the solution to the problems in this case. And I still believe that's true. There's a stat that if he gets 5 or more catches, the Packers are 12-4. That's not one of those when the Packers run the ball 25 times, and it's correlation, not causality. And it's actually worse than that, because if you're running a lot, it's usually because you're leading or because it's working. And so it's just not a useful stat. This is one of those interesting ones where it's like, well, when Aaron Jones is asked to be a big part of the passing game, it works and they win. So just something to keep in mind. Let's get into it with JT O'Sullivan. Joining me now, the architect behind the QB School YouTube page, which is awesome, and longtime NFL quarterback, former Green Bay Packers quarterback, JT O'Sullivan joins me now. And JT, before we get into the nitty gritty of quarterback play, I just want to ask you why you decided to start doing a channel and teach people about football, because for my money, it's as good a resource as there is out there for the average person to learn about quarterback play. And so what made you go, hey, I think I have something to give to an audience?
Well, I certainly appreciate the kind words, Peter. It came from a few different things. It was mostly me thinking about getting back into football. I had kind of just finished grad school and was just kind of looking to see what was next. And my brother's in the podcast space, and he basically said, I think if I was starting over, I'd do a YouTube page instead of strictly podcast. And if you wanted to see if you were interested in football, because I took like essentially a mental sabbatical from football when I went back to school, just needed a break after playing. And so it was this, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. The commute is perfect. And it was kind of, it's been one of those things that has really grown. And I would never have thought that I would have enjoyed it as much as I do. I really do enjoy it. And it fits what I love about football, a lot of what I love about football, and kind of my own little niche and lane. And so it's kind of taken off, and it's been a really fun to kind of be part of it and kind of give back to the game that's given me so much.
Yeah, it is. I think that comes through that you enjoy doing it. You have fun doing it, even when you're breaking down a dog game or someone who doesn't play, like whatever it is, you get into it. And I think that translates into the content. Before we talk specifics about Jordan Love and Justin Fields, when you just cut on the tape, to borrow Matt LaFleurism, what are you looking for to start with? Like, what is the first thing you're like, all right, I'm going to sit down and watch what Jordan Love, Justin Fields? What's the first thing you're like, all right, I want to see this?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, just like for the channel's sake, I'm looking for like things that I think are interesting,
Okay.
plays that pop. I think from like the player, like the recovering player and recovering coach, if you can be that, like my eyes always gravitate to the line of scrimmage. I mean,
Yeah.
like always, but I've learned kind of the hard way that, me putting a long video of run plays on a quarterback channel is not gonna generate the interest. And
Unless it's Jalen Hurts, maybe.
yeah, and there are some guys. There actually, the quarterback run game now is a real deal thing, and so there are elements of it. But for the channel, it's a lot of, I love explosive plays. I enjoy cool design, cool offensive architecture, how things are layered together, game planning wise, and you see that kind of coupled with the skill set that some of the elite guys have, where they're able to create in structure and out of structure, and just kind of anything that is just interesting. That's the greatest thing for me in this channel is I just do whatever the hell I think is interesting, and hopefully it resonates with people too.
So I want you to put your GM hat on here when you're going to sit down and watch someone. You did a lot of these backup quarterbacks, preseason rookies, like 5th round rookies. Like when you're trying to look at like what Jake Haener is doing, or like some of these guys who maybe you haven't seen them. What are you trying to find in terms of traits? What is the, like, if this guy can't do this, he just can't play trait for you as a quarterback?
Well, I don't know if there are like disqualifiers, especially, when you're not in the building, in the room.
Yeah.
I think that there are things that just look like universal Sunday football is kind of how I think of it. The things that jump off the film, I mean, anybody can spot arm strength or crazy athletic ability. Those kind of things I think are easy to see. The things that I get a kick out of are things like anticipation, anticipation with accuracy, consistency with your ball location, being like precise with your ball location, especially in the preseason, where sometimes you're like introducing your people in the huddle. Like, hey, nice to meet you. Glad they signed you today. Like, we're going to need you to run a 12-yard hook here real fast. And so, those types of things, because I know how hard it is to do that. And so those things jump off the film with me. And then, just taking advantage of your moment. Those reps are so critical. They really are. It's not that they guarantee that you're going to have a fulfilling career or anything like that, but to those guys, how much work they've put in to get those opportunities to go out there and flourish. I know how important it is, and it's fun for me to kind of celebrate some of those guys that play well on the channel.
All right, a lot more to come as we dig into the finer points of quarterback play, Jordan Love, Justin Fields, all that good stuff here on Locked On Packers. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Incredible ad that they're running. We saw it during the game last night. I got 5 on it. I'm not going to sing it. I'm going to spare you that, but put 5 on it. I'm saying. Plus, all customers who can bet $5 5 on it, will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from the spread to player props and more. The Packers +1 looking very juicy. I already have the Packers at +2.5. Thank you very much. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. Take all the Packers overs, all the Jordan Love overs. I'm telling you, get them now. I would take the Aaron Jones player prop overs right now. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. The Locked On Ultimate NFL Season Preview is here. The 7-episode extravaganza brings opinions, analysis, and plenty of debate from all 32 of our Locked On NFL hosts. Hey, that means me. With added insight from our national experts. It's a can't-miss series before the season kicks off. Catch every episode on Locked On NFL or YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Matt LaFleur has talked about Jordan Love needing to marry his feet to his eyes. When you hear a coach say that, is that something, number one, you can readily identify on film? And number two, what is it that he's trying to explain? Like, why does that matter?
Marry my feet to my eyes. I think that's just a way of saying he needs to be on time where he's supposed to be on time. So I think certain people, depending on who you talk to in the industry, as far as like gurus that I am not, as far as like quarterback training, will tell you that, your feet kind of lead your eyes lead your feet type of thing. So they're never necessarily going to be synced up, in my opinion. But I think he just wants to know that he can trust the quarterback to do what he's asked to do and put your eyes in the correct spot consistently and make good decisions. It's just kind of like a fancy way to say, hey, bro, you need to make good decisions with the ball. And I need to know that you know what those good decisions are. You can't be, the recess vibe of just kind of getting back there, making a play or bailing or things like that, that kind of, they might look like a spectacular highlight, but really you're pissing off, every coach in the building, because you're bailing or because you're doing something off structure when something in structure is there. And so it's just that fine line and builds trust. And you can really only build trust like that in game. So to be able to go out there and do it Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday is how you build that kind of trust.
Do you remember, like, you did a video of Jordan Love when he was coming out at Utah State? I don't need you to have the scouting report memorized, but you did one on his game in Kansas City. Do you have a memory of what your first impressions of Jordan Love were?
I honestly don't.
That's all right.
I can remember being surprised that the Packers took him where he did.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think I was the only one to feel that way.
A lot of Packer fans felt that way.
Yeah. And I think the college film kind of would have shown that. I think the thing that you're alluding to is the more recent film, is probably, I go dead there. You still got me.
I got you.
The more recent film is probably, to me, shows a guy who's a much more polished, consistent, rhythmic, he looks like he's watched a lot of Aaron, really. There are times if you like blur your eyes, the rhythm and the footwork and the way that he's getting through certain concepts and the rhythm that he's playing with on some of these throws, it looks a lot like 12. And so being able to kind of, see that impact. Now it's just about, probably him taking those traits and blending his own game into whatever it's going to be kind of as he makes his own path.
Yeah, there's like the percussiveness of the footwork is one of those things where you just sort of, if you just watch the lower half, you go, oh yeah, that looks a lot like Aaron Rodgers, right down to and you highlighted this. He had a play to Christian Watson across the field where he opens his body and just with his hips generates the torque to make a throw. Not necessarily how you'd teach it, but that's how Aaron Rodgers would throw it. And so he has some of those traits, it seems like.
And I bet he's picked up on that, like just watching it over and over. And I'm sure that their coaches kind of promote the way that Aaron does and plays the position. And they probably had many conversations about, how to best generate torque like that, or how do you do it? How does this feel? Those types of things that you aren't necessarily privy to, it's not happening in the locker room. It's happening, in the meeting room, in the hallway, where they're talking about a certain rep, where you can really take that and then, you get a couple years on the practice field to experiment with it. And now we all see it and we're like, oh, that looks way better than it was. Yeah, well, he's been a pro for, years now. You should see improvement like that. And so that part of it, I think, is really cool. And it'll just be fascinating because it's what a great opportunity for him, man, to go out there and get this opportunity to lead a franchise like this and take over for a guy who's done it so well and kind of give you that runway to then go make your own path.
There seems to be competing viewpoints on how valuable it is to have that time to sit and learn. It seems like you will hear some people say, I wish everybody could do this. It would be valuable for everyone. Matt LaFleur, I think, even said we'd have more good quarterbacks if more quarterbacks got this opportunity. And then if you look at some of the recent examples, it's like, if the guys don't play early, usually it's because they're not very good. This is a unique example because he's sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. Do you have a sort of a side? Do you have a feeling on the sitting versus not sitting?
Yeah, I think it's a luxury nowadays. I think it's maybe a luxury for a reason you didn't mention. I think a lot of time rosters have an advantage to build themselves without a NFL, starting quarterback deal on there. If you're dealing with a rookie money at the quarterback position, you can kind of construct your roster in a little bit different ways than if you're paying someone, who's a top tier guy in the league. Not that you can't do it, but it's just different ways to construct it. And so that part of it is an advantage. So you want to find out what you have. And then the other part about it that usually stinks is that if you're a guy who's drafted really high, usually first round guy, top 10 guy, you're probably going to a team that's not good, and so, all of those things coupled together, and you're probably going to get some not great kind of outcomes. And so to be able to go somewhere, sit behind a guy who was already probably a Hall of Famer, and then to kind of relight a fire under him, then he goes out there and does it again multiple times, and you get to see him do it and play at that high of a level, that's a pretty awesome opportunity. And yeah, you would have a lot better quarterbacks if everybody got to sit behind an MVP, that's a great, thank you for that hot take. Yes.
Yeah. Let's switch gears here to Justin Fields because this is something that I think a lot of people are excited to see this year with someone around him to actually play where you're not having to, guys on the outside, you're not asking Equanimeous St. Brown and not a shot at him, but like it's different when it's DJ Moore, right? And so what do you expect to be able to change in his game, if anything, with, hopefully a better offensive line, some more weapons at his disposal? What do you think just becomes easier for him?
Ooh, I mean, I hope everything becomes a little bit easier because it's not going to last very long if it's not. I don't know, man. I think a lot of people, as you alluded to, are really optimistic about it. I think if you turn on the tape and in the most recent tape, it doesn't look that good. It doesn't look like anything like what you would hope it is. Now, granted, we're talking preseason football and every excuse you can imagine about not game planning, whatever, but the tape is the tape. And so, I personally want to see significant improvement with his ability to throw the ball down the field from within the pocket on time and show any level of anticipation.
Yeah.
Okay? Any level of it. Now, part of that might just be, hey, they don't ask him to make those types of throws consistently because of what you maybe alluded to before, because of issues up front or issues on the perimeter. I'm probably not as high on their perimeter as maybe other people. It's certainly improved, but I don't necessarily think it's like, a hurt situation where you've got, all of a sudden you've got a guaranteed stud number one. You've got another huge kind of surging younger guy, and they've, built this offensive line in front of him that makes life easy. I still think it's going to be a tough situation, but I would love for him to show significant improvement with just the consistency and show like any sort of like outside the numbers anticipation and consistency and precision. And this is the hard part. You have to couple that with not losing what he does. So you got to keep that mojo of his ability to get vertical in the run game, to create those quarterback runs, to be able to generate that dynamic playmaking ability. And we just need to have some level of drop back game that looks like Sunday football. And I'm optimistic that hopefully we make steps in the right direction, but the little sample size we've seen this year, they're not going to be able to throw screens for touchdowns every play. And they're not going to, and certainly the last time out there, it's not going to look like that, hopefully, every single Sunday either. So they've got their work cut out for them from what we've seen so far. It doesn't mean they can't do it, but, we'll see. I personally really like watching Justin Fields play because he's so dynamic.
Yeah.
I just would love it to be a little bit more consistent from within the pocket, driving the ball down the field in the drop back game.
One of the concerns from him coming out was just the process seemed a little slow. And it was just, okay, the delivery sometimes can be a little slow. Getting from 1 to 2 to 3 sometimes can be a little slow. And it just seems like if some experience and not feeling like you're worried about getting hit all the time can allow him to just work a little faster, it seems like that will help. Do you see that? Is that something that you agree with, or like where are you on that?
I mean, I think everybody thinks that the release is a little bit slow, and it is if you compare it to Aaron Rodgers.
Well, right.
and,
Everyone is,
it's
yeah.
I personally have never been that big of a. I never thought it was like a Tim Tebow, kick below the
No,
the
it's-
waist
yeah.
type thing, and so it's a fine line for me. I'm all about quarterbacks finding their natural, consistent stroke, and so if that's his and he can polish it up and make it as consistent as possible, I personally think it's fine. I think the thing you alluded to that probably is a little bit scarier and perhaps a little bit more towards what I think is there might be something with just his ability to see and be able to see things happen kind of in real time and anticipate that you were like, man, you've played a decent amount of snaps now. You should have some anticipation throws in your film. Like, I mean, some. And so I get it at Ohio State. You're doing a lot of like air raidy things where you're seeing guys come open and you're running to grass. But in the league, you're going to have timing throws outside the numbers that you can drive the ball with anticipation. And so if we don't start seeing some of that stuff, then I think it's at least worth considering like, hey, are there vision issues here? Like, what exactly are we seeing or not seeing as far as the game of it, the field of vision? Because it just feels like sometimes it's a little narrow in kind of his scope or his lane where you're like, man, that looks like it's in your lane where you're looking, let it rip on time. And for whatever reason, it doesn't come out on time. And it can be because of, he's getting pummeled or any number of different reasons, or the guy he doesn't trust on the perimeter or whatever. But at some point, I think it's not a stretch to say we got to see some anticipation throws down the field at some point.
All right, we're going to finish up here with JT O'Sullivan, some Justin Fields talk, a little bit more Jordan Love talk as we get set for week 1, Packers Bears here on Locked On Packers. Look, buying tickets to your favorite sporting events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer last-minute deals and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and just start getting hyped for all the fun you're going to have. That's why you buy the tickets, to go have fun at the show or the game or whatever you're going to see. Plus the lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all of this great functionality for you in the Gametime app. Forgetting planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find the ticket in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110%, not just 100%, 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Everydayers. We are going live on Sunday after the game and then back with another monster week of Locked On Packers. Go check it out and subscribe on YouTube. Some of it seems to be feel just generally, like I think the field of vision thing is one thing, but also he, going back to Ohio State even, converted pressures to sacks at a really high rate. There's like a feel, like the ability to move in the pocket to feel pressure without seeing it explicitly. He's incredibly dynamic when he escapes, but he doesn't always feel it. That leads to some fumble issues. Like, is that stuff teachable? I don't know.
I think it is. I absolutely think all of those things are teachable. I think you can get better at all of them. I think play calling can also help that. Okay. And so what I mean by that is finding ways to create quick throws, to allow those types of situations where you do have to hang in the pocket and we can't move the launch point, and that they know that we're going to throw it. Well, then that kind of pocket movement, that kind of pocket feel, to be able to have enough comfort with throws that should be anticipation throws. Like, I always think of it as like a deep in or a deep comeback. Those are 20-yard throws in the league. Those are shotgun, 5-step, hitch, throw. If you just can learn to let those things go on time and in rhythm, it's not so much, hey, I got to see it get open because I'm terrified of throwing an interception. It's, hey, I trust my guy. He's supposed to be 20 yards down the field, 2 yards inside the numbers. This is the coverage I'm good versus. Let's let it rip versus this coverage and do it. And you start to do it in practice. You start to build the relationship with guys that you trust, and then that translates to the game. But up until this point, I think you're right on that there are things where you're kind of like nervous about why we're not seeing growth in some of these situations.
Is there an offense, like, and I know that offenses can be nimble in the way that they are put together, but if we think about some of the big buckets that we put offenses in, is there a bucket you think that best fits Justin Fields?
I mean, I think he fits in any offense. I think the play calling can be not necessarily a crutch, but allows him to use his strengths to the best of his ability. So what I mean by that is, you're obviously going to have some sort of quarterback run game. Okay, when do you do that? Is it just tight red zone? Is it just third and short? Is it just short yardage situations? Are you running them all the time? Are we running them inside the tackles? Are we running gap runs? Are we running on the perimeter? What does that look like? Couple that with the play action, what does he do well? He drives the ball down the field when he sees it. All right, well, then let's have a bunch of those. Let's move the launch point. Let's get him on the edge. Let's get some quick game. Let's get those perimeter screens going. All those types of things to then, hey, when we're going to take a chance down the field, so it's 3rd and 10, we got to throw it. Well, let's get creative and do exactly what he feels the most comfortable with. So I think he could, and that's any NFL offense. Any NFL offense could do that. And I just think I would love to see their offense thrive in building around his strengths. But I always get nervous when I say that, because that doesn't mean put him in a box. That means allow him to be him, but flourishing at the highest levels in really tough situations. Like 3rd and 10 from the 15-yard line going in the red zone. That's tough. You don't want to take a sack because you don't want to get moved back in field goal range. You sure as hell don't want to turn the ball over, but you want to get a first down. And so now you're in this kind of like muddy zone where you got to be at your absolute pinnacle best precision wise. And I don't know what that's going to look like for them. And again, I know that the perimeter is improved. The perimeter is probably still not what I would want as a perimeter if I was playing quarterback.
Last thing here, I want to circle back on Jordan Love. We've heard this idea, and we certainly talked about it on our show, about the Matt LaFleur offense versus the Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers offense. What is the difference between what Matt LaFleur, quote unquote, wants to do? I think some of that is a little overblown, but when you hear that, and Mark Murphy, the president of the team, sort of says the quiet part loud, Matt LaFleur downplays it all the way and says, no, this is going to be the same. And Mark Murphy's like, no, it's going to be more Matt's offense. When you hear that, what does that mean to you?
I mean, to me, it means that the coach is going to dictate what we're doing more consistently. And so I think a lot of NFL offenses will defer to the quarterback, specifically if he's an established guy, like, hey, if you don't like this, tell me you don't like it, and we're not going to call it. Like, we put it in the game plan, but Saturday night, you don't feel comfortable with it, or we don't like this guy doing it, it's out. Well, a younger guy might not necessarily have that confidence to say, hey, scratch this. I like this. I want to do more of these. I'm going to call this. I'm going to check to this. I'll kill this. I'll can this, all the little tools that you have in your toolkit to be able to do what you feel comfortable with, as opposed to a younger quarterback who might get the game plan, and there might be, 75% of these plays have motions and shifts. Well, if you don't like motions and shifts, and like that muddies the picture when you're playing, you might not know that muddies the picture while you're playing, but your coach loves that stuff, and he's going to do that, and your run game is going to be awesome. But then when you drop it back to pass, there's going to be guys moving at the snap, and you're not going to know what the hell coverage it is. Well, you don't know that till you don't know that. And so you got to learn that the hard way. And so things like that, it'll be interesting to see, like, little things that the coach can dictate. The coach can dictate the personnel's, the motion usage, the shift usage, things that I think sometimes make things muddy for a quarterback. If things look muddy, that's probably because Aaron's not there saying, hey, like, we're not doing, I'm comfortable with this. I'm going to let this go. I want to throw this slant in this situation, or this on the backside in the red zone. I always think of, I actually call them, I used to call them Varsity Blues touchdowns. Now I call them Aaron Rodgers touchdowns, where it's kind of like, it's a run play, but he just eyeballs the wide receiver. And, for a long time, it was Adams for a really, and they had a great connection. He's just like, I'm going to run a fade, or I'm going to run a slant. I'll just catch it and put it on you really quickly. Those types of things that, like, I'm sure that the coach is not loving that. He loves it when it works and it's awesome, but that's taking away that power, that intent, that run game that they're trying to create, all those types of things that, you're probably not going to see from Jordan Love as much.
Although we did see that exact play in the low red zone, Jordan Love throw that just like it's me and the receiver, touchdown to Christian Watson. So
it's awesome when it works.
It is. And if it doesn't, he's going to hear about it from Matt LaFleur. You know that. JT,
they're going to be in 23
awesome,
personnel next time.
This is awesome, man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, no problem, Peter.
All right. Thanks to JT O'Sullivan for joining the show. Great to talk to him. I had like 15 more questions I wanted to ask him, and we couldn't get to them because we ran out of time. Hopefully we get him back and we get a chance. I'm going to hear some Brett Favre stories. I want to talk some scheme related stuff. I want to talk a lot more quarterback nuance. He is just a really fun guy to talk to. And it's a great time to get someone like that in who can explain a lot of the intricacies of quarterback play. When we're about to see Justin Fields try and prove it, we're about to see Jordan Love try and take that proverbial next step. So that was, I thought, really useful for us as we try and preview this game. That's what I'm going to try and do on these Fridays. We're not going to have a lot of new things. We're going to have spent all week talking about stuff. So let's get some conversations that are relevant to the game, but not necessarily previewing the game. There's a ton of preview content. That's what Crossover Thursday's for. That's what our conversations with Lily Zhao are for. That's even what Expert Tuesdays in a lot of ways are for. By the way, Ty Dunn on the show next week. You guys are not ready for what he has coming up on Go Long, and I cannot wait to talk to him about all of it. That's coming up next week, but that's going to be on Expert Tuesday. Just want to get you ready. Week 2 prep already. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live on our YouTube page, go subscribe and you can hang out with us there so you can stay Locked On Packers.